There is a specific kind of exhaustion that builds up over years of being undervalued. It rarely culminates in a sudden, explosive argument. Instead, you reach a quiet, agonizing plateau where your body simply stops negotiating with a reality that diminishes you. When you tolerate an environment where your needs are consistently pushed aside, the damage goes far deeper than daily frustration. Every ignored boundary acts as a slow drip poison to your own internal compass. Over time, your subconscious absorbs this treatment as an undeniable truth. You begin to internalize the narrative that you deserve less, quietly shrinking your ambitions, passing on opportunities, feeling unworthy of receiving them. The pioneering psychologist Carl Jung observed a crucial distinction about human worth. He argued that your intrinsic value remains independent of how others choose to treat you. It is forged by the level of regard you hold for yourself. Choosing to walk away from someone who doesn't choose you serves a primary purpose. It halts that corrupted narrative and sends a direct, unignorable message to your own subconscious that you are worth protecting. This raises a profoundly uncomfortable question. If an environment is actively causing you pain, why is it so difficult to leave? Jung described a phenomenon called the bond to the known. Our nervous systems bypass evaluating if a situation is healthy, sorting experiences into two rigid categories: the familiar, processed as safe, and the unknown, which triggers an immediate threat response. For anyone who grew up in an environment where affection was conditional, or where love arrived tangled with criticism, pain is highly familiar. Your nervous system learned to recognize that exact friction as the standard for connection, programming you to seek out relationships that replicate the same dynamic. When you finally decide to leave, the overwhelming panic you feel originates from the loss of your psychological map. You are stepping off the edge of the only relational blueprint you have ever known, straight into an empty space. You might expect that cutting ties with someone who drained you would bring instant relief. Instead, the first thing that usually arrives is a crushing wave of guilt, whispering that perhaps you overreacted or failed to try hard enough. Jung attributed this treacherous inner voice to the persona. This is the psychological mask you constructed in early childhood, built to people please, avoid conflict, and ensure you would remain accepted by those around you. Over the years, the persona taught you that asking for space was selfish and standing your ground was dangerous. When you finally set a hard boundary and walk away, the persona reacts with high alarm because you violated the very rules it created to keep you safe. That heavy guilt indicates that an outdated survival mechanism is losing its grip. It is the friction of a long-standing, toxic pattern finally being dismantled. But we still have to look at the mechanics of the attraction itself. Why does someone who offers so little hold such an iron grip on your attention? The answer lies in what Jung called the shadow. This is the collection of parts we refuse to look at, the deeply buried insecurities, the quiet belief we aren't enough, and the fears we hide. A partner who constantly makes you feel small isn't inventing those insecurities from scratch. They act as a psychological mirror, locking into and amplifying the exact fears of inadequacy that already reside in your shadow. Removing the toxic person from your life stops the immediate damage, but those underlying fractures remain exposed. The pain left behind is a direct demand from your own psyche to finally witness and integrate the wounds you've been avoiding. That person never possessed the authority to define your worth. They simply provided a painful, accurate map of the internal work required for you to become whole. When the dust settles and that chaotic dynamic is gone, you are left with a deafening silence. At first, this empty space manifests as the sharp, biting pain of pure loneliness, or soledad. There is a critical distinction, however, between the passive suffering of loneliness and the intentional, active state of solitude. You cannot hear your own voice over the constant, demanding noise of a relationship that consumes all your energy. Solitude removes those distractions, providing an essential psychological resource for self-discovery. By sitting alone with yourself, you stop the habit of outsourcing your safety and worth to others. Embracing this void is the only way to starve the dependency that kept you trapped. Now the constructive work begins. You have the empty space required to stop performing for an audience of critics and start identifying who you actually are when the pressure to please is removed. Jung viewed this as the ultimate goal of human psychology, calling it individuation. It is the rigorous process of shedding childhood masks and expectations to become the person you were meant to be. As you step into that authenticity, the way you use boundaries changes. They evolve from defensive walls used to keep abusers away into bridges that protect your energy and clearly communicate your needs to the world. Every no delivered to a dynamic that drains you effectively acts as a foundational commitment to building a radically authentic life. As your internal sense of self-worth solidifies, your external environment begins to shift because your daily behaviors and choices have changed. Jung termed this synchronicity, a phenomenon where internal psychological shifts seem to echo in external events. As you stop seeking validation from those who withhold it, those toxic dynamics lose their anchor and dissolve. This creates a vacuum that is soon filled by people and opportunities that recognize the value you now see in yourself. This alignment follows a direct logic. By raising the standard for what you accept, you redefine the criteria for who is allowed to remain in your orbit. The world around you is simply responding to the new parameters you've set for your own presence. Looking back, the relationship that brought you to your knees stops looking like a tragedy. The suffering expanded your capacity to know yourself. Your time, your energy, and your presence are finite, sacred assets. They are too valuable to be traded for the hope of conditional love. The choice to leave someone who never chose you marks the arrival at your own life, finally free from the burden of seeking external permission to exist.